In this video, we're going to be talking about accessing the data, looking at what is in the data frame and just being able to get an idea for how big it is, what variables are in there, things like that. Right. So we have the data frame, the California Workplace Area Characteristics, inside a data frame called DF using this code. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of look at some basic information about this data frame. So I'm going to start first with dim, D-I-M, and this is going to give me the number of rows and columns. So there's about 243,000 rows, 53 columns. Right? If I wanted to know, for example, what the names of the columns were, I could just use names. Right? And this is going to give me all of the names of the columns. Now, of course, you'd have to kind of look at a code book in order to figure out what each of these mean, but this can just kind of give you the structure of the data frame here. If you want to get a kind of, quick look at what is inside this data frame, you can use this thing called glimpse. Right? So what this is going to give you is kind of some of the same information that I've just looked at. So number of observations, number of variables, the names of all these variables. But it also kind of gives you like a little bit of an idea of, oh, here are some of the values that they can take, the first few values. Okay. And then what you can also see is that there's this column in the middle right here. There's CHR and then DBL all the way down. This just refers to what data type it is. So for the first one, it's a character. That's why it's CHR. And even though these are numbers, you can see the quotes. Those indicate that this is a string variable. These are characters. The rest, these are all double precision values. These are numbers. And then even all the way going down to the create date. This is stored as a number rather than as a character. Okay, so now we have an idea of what's inside this data set. There's all these characteristics. These each kind of represent different numbers of jobs. The C000, that's the total number of jobs within the census block, for example. The W geocode represents the kind of census block ID. So what we can do is we can just kind of look at accessing individual values. Right? And there's a few different ways to do that. So one thing that I'm going to start out with is just looking at accessing one column. Right? And you'll notice that there's this kind of $ in front, and that's just kind of a hint to what we can do is we can kind of access individual columns using this $ notation. Right? So if I did df $C000, it'll give me all of the values within that column. Right? And you'll notice this prints out a lot. There's this little ... in the middle showing that it's not printing out everything. There's going to be, what was it, like 243,000 observations. And so it's not going to be able to print out everything, or you don't want it to print out everything. So, this is just showing a few of them. But that's how you might access it. Right? And so, for example, you can take this and say, I want the total number of jobs that were in California. And I can just do a sum. And I can, take that vector, I can sum up all the values, and, I can get the sum of that vector. So basically to do that, we would have to access that first column. Now, we can also access individual rows. You can use this kind of bracket notation. And so what I can do is I can, use this bracket notation with a comma to indicate which rows and which columns I want. So if I do 1 comma, that'll give me the first row. And then nothing after the comma indicates that I want every single column, right? And so you'll notice, this is that first row. It'll give me all the columns. Notice again, it doesn't print out everything because that would be way too much. Okay? But I can also use, df1 comma, maybe I'll do, 1. And that'll give me the first row and the first column. Notice the first column is W geocode. I could also do, the actual name of the column. So W geocode, and this will give me the same thing. Right? So the W geocode column for that first row. And then similarly, what I did above was I used the $ notation, but this will give you kind of the same thing. Right? Basically, this is kind of giving you just that one column, the C000 column. So, just using this bracket notation, it's a little bit more flexible. You can kind of use it to access, different rows, different columns, things like that. All right. And then, this is going to print out a lot. So you might have to scroll down a lot, but basically, you can kind of access different columns, access different rows. Now, one thing that might be very useful is, for example, if you wanted maybe the first 10 rows and the first 10 columns. You can use this little colon notation to indicate a range of numbers. Right? And so this is going to give me rows 1 through 10 and columns 1 through 10. And, I can see all the data for those values. And this is because that colon notation can be used to just create a vector of each number between those two numbers. So from 1 all the way to 10. And this is a really quick way you can use to kind of get any number of rows that you want, and just maybe try to limit it to a certain column values. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is kind of show how you might use kind of creating vectors using this kind of C notation. Right? And this C allows you to just kind of put in whatever values that you might want. It doesn't need to be evenly spaced out like with this colon notation, and it will be able to show just those, in this case, just those rows. Right? So I just did C, and basically this C notation is able to create a vector with the values 1, 4, 6, 7, and 9. And so those are the only rows that are shown here. The same thing I can do with the column names. So C000, then I'm going to do CA01. These represent the different age groups. And CA03. Right? And so these, I'm able to just get just those 4 columns. Right? I could have also done something like 2:5, and it would have given me the same answer.